All right, I say we can start. So welcome everybody to our first session of our series Sustainability is Better Business. My name is Andrea and I'm of the Kickstart team and organizer of this session. Thank you for joining. Today we're going to have a 30-minute talk followed by a Q&A session. And I will soon pass on the spotlight to Mathilde. But before, maybe some of you are wondering why Kickstart is organizing these sessions. After all, we do innovation, not sustainability. Well, we do open innovation with a purpose. So we accelerate collaboration between organizations and well-established startups. And the goal is meaningful impact. And this is the key point. What is more meaningful than tackling the biggest challenge of our generation? So the purpose of Brown Bag sessions is to, first of all, take advantage of our awesome ecosystem. We want to collect the knowledge of the people within it and share the different aspects and meaning of sustainability. We also want to learn why sustainability is better business through some case studies and practical examples. And lastly, we want to create a community of interested individuals, makers, and entrepreneurs who are willing to create a solution with us. So let's get into it. A couple words about Mathilde. She studied at La Sorbonne in Paris, and after getting a master's degree in management and international business, she worked in business development, product management, and in some big tech startups in Sydney. She's now working as a senior marketing manager at Inyova, where she's looking for new ways to make impact investing more mainstream, which is awesome. So Mathilde, thank you so much for your time and for giving this session to us. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Andrea. So let's have a look at sharing my screen and making sure that works. Great. Andrea, can you give me a thumbs up? This is working? No, it's not working. Is it? Is it working now? Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about how can finance have an impact on sustainable development. I'll basically, I was going to introduce myself, but I think Andrea did a really good job. So as Andrea said, I work at Inyova, which is an impact investing platform where we operate in Switzerland and now in Germany as well. I consider myself a big startup enthusiast. I've worked in startup for the past 6 years. Also an investor, mainly because I joined Inyova and got really into finance, cryptocurrency as well, and consider myself a techie. I love when we can join tech and sustainability. And environmentalist, I think that goes without saying. If you work for Inyova, you have to care about the biggest challenge that our world is facing right now. I do a bunch of things in my personal life to make sure this I do my part, but obviously I'm on a mission, just like Inyova, to make the world a better place through finance and impact investing. Yeah, so without further ado, let me just tell you a bit more what I'm going to talk about today. I would like to introduce you a little bit. I introduce you to impact investing. So what does it stand for, what it is, which impact it has on the world. Then I'm going to go a little bit more into detail on how Inyova is approaching impact investing and what we do at Inyova to make sure our impact investor actually have an impact. And try not to make it too long, so we have time for a Q&A at the end. Yes, so I guess if you have any questions during the presentation, just keep them, and I'd be very happy to answer them at the end of the presentation. So let's start with impact investing and why it's so important. I think if there's one thing you need to really remember from this presentation would be this slide, the fact that every investment has an impact, even the money on your bank account. I think this statement is pretty strong. I also feel that before really getting into impact investing and Inyova, this is probably something I wasn't really aware of, because obviously every investment will fund something, whether it's a company through shares, whether it's a project by investing in a startup. it has an impact. And the truth is the money on your bank account also has an impact because the bank is doing something with it always, which is probably what I wasn't too aware of, because in my head, I had my money in the bank and it was there and I could use it whenever I need it. But the truth is obviously the bank is using it to finance projects and is using this liquidity for other things. So once you've understood that, you see that you have as a consumer, as a person, an impact just by having this money on a bank account. And now the question is whether this money is used to fund good projects or bad projects, and worse, is it used to fund things that you support and that are according to your value, or do they support things that you're really against and that you can't stand behind? And that goes really well with the fact that actually where the capital goes today will determine how we live tomorrow. There's a lot of examples, obviously, but every economic development we've seen in the world was funded, obviously, and the funding really determined how our century was looking like. I think trains is a really good example. So if it wasn't 200 years ago when everyone was the society decided that there was huge potential in building trains and building train tracks, there would probably be no trains today. And we would have probably not seen the revolution, the industrial revolution we've seen. So trains are a very good example. Renewable energy and solar panel are also a good one. 20 years ago, a lot of people decided to invest in that technology. And this is one of the reasons why solar panels today are quite a cheap source of sustainable energy, because we've decided to invest in that. And another example would be space travel. I'm not talking about years and years ago. I'm talking about right now, where a bunch of eccentric billionaires are just trying to conquer space, and so much funding is going into that field that technology innovations are really growing, and this is really what we'll see next. The problem now is when we think of that, it means that what we invest in right now will have an effect in the world of tomorrow. And so the problem is right now, the capital is not really where it needs to be. So if we look at the UN sustainability goals that we all hope will be attained pretty soon, we see there's a huge gap. So in the world, there's about $3.9 trillion invested in general in any kind of projects. And right now, what is investing towards reaching the UN sustainability goals is only about 1.4 trillion. So there's a huge gap. The money is probably not going where it needs to be, which means that there's still a lot of funding to find new places to extract petrol or oil. We still invest heavily in that kind of industry instead of investing in other industry that would be potentially better. So let me go back to impact investing and what that is actually. I get that question a lot from people that think that because you invest sustainably, you probably don't get as much return as you would usually. People are often a little bit confused between what is giving money to a charity and impact investing. So impact investing is really a combination of two things. It's all investments that are made with the intention to generate a social and environmental impact alongside a financial return. So when you are an impact investor, you invest for your financial future and you expect to have financial returns better than what you would get on a simple savings account or a simple bank account. So this is one part of it. You're preparing for your future, you're growing your returns. But the second part is you're doing that by financing things that have a social and environmental impact. So instead of financing projects that you might not stand behind or that don't have an impact at all, you really focused your investment and your money on these social and environmental projects. And so really the idea of Inyova in the first place came from what if investing could be about purpose and a better world as well as about return. So this mixture between the two. We're not just giving money to a charity, which is a great deed to do, but also not really building your own financial future. You're also not just about generating profits and you don't care where your money is going. It's really about the junction of the two. And when we've realized that, when Inyova was created about 5 years ago, The truth is there's not that many ways to do that, because unless you're really rich and you can invest in startups, typically like a green startup or green project, usually you would need to be to have a certain amount of money, plus you have to be able to take a certain level of risk, because investing in such type of investment is quite risky, probably the riskiest that exists. So you have to have that. If you don't have that much money and you just go to your bank and ask for a sustainable option, usually you will be matched with funds, green funds, where really the impact and the sustainability is quite questionable. Your banker will probably tell you, your financial advisor will probably tell you the three top companies that are in there, but that's about it. And if you do dig a little bit deeper into what these green ETFs or green funds have, there's a lot of company that you probably wouldn't want to see in your portfolio. The reason why this company ended up there, I'll go a bit more into detail later, but it's just because usually we just look at ESG criteria, and a company like McDonald's typically could have like great sustainable operations, but the product and the impact that this company has on the world might be more questionable. So really the question we asked ourselves was, what if everyone could be an impact investor? What if you could start with a little amount of money? So right now in Switzerland, you can start investing from 2,000 Swiss franc, and in Germany from 100 euro. So you don't have to be crazy rich to start investing. And what if we could redirect all this capital, all this private capital, into things that can have an impact? Yes, so this is our mission, really, to turn investing into a social movement for a better world. I'm going to go more into detail on how we do that, obviously, and we'll show you how to become an impact investor yourself, but also what type of investment exists and what investment have an impact and which investment don't really have an impact on. So yeah, let me just dig a little bit into our approach. So what I said before, and I think that was the feeling of a lot of people in Switzerland, but also in the world, is that the green options that are out there, if you're just a normal person that is looking for to invest, are not great. So you do end up with funds that basically are untransparent. You don't know which company you're invested in, and worse, you're not even investing in shares. You're just investing in funds that are traded themselves on the market. So it's just this black box that is really lacking transparency. And of course, you can also invest yourself in a bunch of shares and just decide, okay, I do think this company is great. I'm going to invest in this company. But then you have all the financial side of it. That means that potentially your portfolio is not that diversified. So you put all eggs into one company, and it's not really a long-term approach. So here at Inyova, we don't invest in funds. We actually invest directly in shares. And we invest in companies that we believe make the world a better place. These are just a couple of examples, but we have about 400 companies in our universe. And obviously the important part is, how do we select this company? How do we make sure these 400 companies that make it to the universe are sustainable? And the approach we've chosen is quite different from, it goes beyond ESG criteria, actually. And I will talk about it in just a second. So let's say you're interested to become an impact investor with Inyova, for instance. It's actually quite simple. The first step, and this is, and I think this is definitely something, regardless if you go with Inyova or with any other provider, is just really trying to think of what are your values when you invest, what are the topics you really want to support. And this is really the first part of the algorithm here at Inyova. So we ask you to choose, we call it impact topics, sometimes we call it values, and we have about 12 topics. So the way we do it at Inyova, and it's also, I'm telling you about the way we do it at Inyova so you can be critical towards other options you might see elsewhere to really try to understand if these options are sustainable or not. So the way we usually do it at Inyova is that we don't just look at the footprint of a company. So the footprint of a company is the way this company operates. It's obviously important. You want to make sure that the company doesn't emit too much CO2. You want to make sure the company has equal salaries between men and women, fair wages in the factories. So all that is part of the footprint category, which is good. It's a good criteria to look at. ESG criteria are very much linked to this one. And we should look at it. But actually, when we do that, as I said before, the problem is a lot of companies can end up in your portfolio that might be great in terms of footprints, but the core of what they do is not that great. And this is why we've decided, we've kind of created this, this new topic that is a little bit less known, which we call the handprint topic. Which literally is the impact that the services and the products of the company have on the world. And this is another dimension. And so we've kind of put all our companies into 12 handprint topics. They vary from renewable energy to alternative to meat, promoting education, fighting viruses. There's about 12 of them. You can still choose footprint topics if you want. We have also, as I said before, gender equality. That is a really loved topic for us. And you have exclusion criteria. So if all of that, you're happy with your portfolio, but you want to put an extra emphasis on some criteria, like for instance, no meat in your portfolio, because you can be investing in companies that do great things, but also have certain activities that focus on meat, you can have a no meat exclusion criteria. So this is kind of the first thing you do. And I'm also thinking that if you're really thinking of investing and having an impact, this is what you want to do. Trying to think of the category and the things you want to promote. And then this is really unique to us. You can personalize your strategy. So once you have selected all these companies, you can, all these topics, sorry. We also ask you about your financial criteria, how long you want to invest, what is your risk profile. And based on that, we match you with about 40 companies. And you see the whole list of companies. And at this point, you can decide to kick some companies out, to add some more companies, and really create a strategy that is good for you. We always make sure that your that your portfolio is diversified across industry, across countries, type of companies as well. And then just like that, you can open your account and become investing. And start investing. So really, this is really becoming into this whole impact investing things, because I mean, I think the topic of greenwashing is very present nowadays in any kind of industry, and it is very, very present in the sustainable investing sector. The problem is that, as I said before, you have a lot of greenwashing. You also have a lot of investment that you believe will have an impact, but they don't necessarily do have an impact. And we'll go into what we call the theory of change, which is the latest academics that exist around this, around impact investing, and that has really tried to theorize how an investment can have an impact on the world, and how you can really change the world through investing. So yeah, let me just dig a little bit more into our universe, how we select companies, because I know this is the main question, right? How do you select companies? How do you make sure these companies are good? How do you make sure that my portfolio is always investing in like good things? So here at Inyova, we have about between 300 and 400 companies in our universe. And we select them. We have an impact team that is really focusing on selecting them. And yeah, we have two main criteria on which we select companies. So we have the sustainability criteria, and then we have the financial criteria, because again, impact investing and sustainable investing in general is about combining the two. You want to do good, but you also want to have financial returns. So if I look at financial criteria, and everything I'm saying here is also just guidelines for whenever you decide to invest. You want to make sure that the company you invest in are stable, unless you're really happy to take more risk, and in that case, that's totally fine. So typically, we want to make sure that the company that we put in your portfolio is liquid on the financial markets. So whenever you need to retrieve the money, you can get it pretty quickly, and we can trade it quickly. We also make sure that the company is quite stable, in the sense that that the company is quite stable because it's listed on the stock market. So we don't invest in startups, for instance. Unfortunately, we have to invest in listed companies. And then obviously you have the whole sustainability criteria. So as I said before, we'll definitely look at the handprint first. We look at the footprint as well. And we want to make sure that the companies we add into our portfolio are champions in at least one of the handprint topic that I showed before. And that they don't do anything to infringe on environmental issues. So the way we do that is you have the general universe. We add companies as we go. So a good example is we added last year Beyond Meat. Oatly just did also its IPO, so we added Oatly to our universe, but we also remove companies. So we're quite aware that sometimes some company looks great, but then over time they can have scandals or do things that are against your own values. So we also monitor them and we make sure we kick them out if it's necessary. So taking all that into account, we pre-select around 300 companies that your portfolio will be made of. Then the sustainability criteria, I think I covered that lengthy before. This is really your values and what you want to invest in. And the way the algorithm is going to work is once you really told us what are your values, what are your topics, what are the things you want to support, we'll give you, we call it a match score. So we look at all the company we have and we'll see which one are the highest match score, and we'll put it into your strategy. And then financial risk and criteria, that's true for any kind of investment. I always say there's two main rules. So don't put all your eggs in one basket, and also think long term when you invest. That's mainly the two main criteria. So we ask you about this. We won't create the same strategy for someone that is very risk averse to someone who is happy to take risks. Our whole idea, though, is that we don't want you to make quick return. We want you to invest for the long term. And that works really well with the sustainability side of it, because this is really on the long term that you're going to see growing returns and steady returns. And we also want that option to be an option to your savings account. So yeah, your financial risk criteria will have a lot to do with, how much money you already have, how much money invested you already have, how much knowledge you have, this kind of things. And we put all of this together. When I say we, actually it's our personalized engine that is doing that and matching you with the right companies. And then at the end, you get a personalized impact investing portfolio where you can see all the company, but you can also see how much return you will have in the long term. So that's really about Inyova, how we do it. I can also answer more questions later. But what I receive as feedback a lot is, okay, great. So I'm going to buy shares. That's nice. But most of the time when I'm buying shares, I'm actually buying shares from a share from someone else. And so my money is really going to that other person, and my money is not necessarily financing something that's the company will do, or like new projects or anything like that. And that's a really good pushback. And this is why the theory of change has been created to, again, try to assess if an investment is really impactful or not. So yeah, I already said that. So this is what I was mentioning. So there's a lot of studies at the moment in Switzerland that is just focusing on that topic, focusing on how we can, select investment, make sure they're good enough. So how do we make sure our money has an impact on the world? The first thing to understand is any company in the world actually has an impact, whether it's the biggest company listed on the stock market, or the local baker, or the local hairdresser. Because this company is producing services, it's producing products, it has an impact on the world. You might be employing people, you have that impact, there's no doubt there. What is more complicated is how you, as an investor, have an impact on the world. And the truth is, you don't have a direct impact on the world. At best, you have an impact on the company you're investing in. And this is why there's a lot of the Dr. Falco, for instance, if you want to Google him in Switzerland, has done a lot of studies on that and shown that right now we have about 99% of all sustainable investment that actually have no impact at all, which is quite sad when you think about it. But it's really theorize how we can make sure that we know if the money has an impact or not. So as I said, investors don't have a direct impact on the world. They can have an impact on the company, and they can have an impact on a company only if there's a couple of things that are in place. And the couple of things that needs to be in place so your investment has an impact will be pre-investment filters, but they don't go far enough. Post-investment actions and additional capital. So basically, if you're just investing, the conventional investing, and it's just about maximizing your return, and I mean, pretty much, yeah, I mean, making money, you don't have any of this. So we'll probably match you with any kind of company, fund that will make sure that you maximize profits. If you start investing as the classic ESG investing, that's where pre-investment filters appear. So you don't just invest in anything, you invest in pre-selected company, you invest in pre-selected funds. And so we definitely have that at Inyova. I've shown it before. We have a universe that is pre-selected. You input your own filters when it comes to handprint, footprint. You also have exclusion, and we go beyond ESG criteria. Now, what becomes really interesting is the two next points that really define what impact investing is, which is post-investment actions and additional capital. Post-investment actions really mean that you've given your money to a company, and this company is doing something with this money to change things, which is not that easy. And the best example is you become a major shareholder in a company, and you can really influence the strategy of the company. So typically here at Inyova, the way we do that, we actually invite CEOs of company to have webinars with us. So impact investors can directly interact with them, challenge them as well, sometimes on the sustainability strategy. We're also working on shareholder voting, which is in development right now. And we also make sure that, I mean, we make close monitoring of company activities. So we kick off any company that has that would have a scandal or that would not follow sustainable criteria. Post-investment action is very fascinating because you have plenty of examples of people that came together, put their capital together, and decided to make a change. So there's this really famous case in the US of a group of nuns that decided to invest in a weapon company, and they became the main shareholder. And by doing that, they were just basically blocking any decision that the company was making, unless it was, let's say, a little bit more sustainable. So this is the best example of having post-investment actions. And then the last part is additional capital, which really makes impact investing. And that is the part that is most known to people, really. You give additional capital to a project, to a company, so it can develop itself further. And so we do that at Inyova because we have mainly shares, but we also have green bonds. And the green bonds it's the money that will directly go into projects that are sustainable and that have a direct impact. So just to put things into perspective, this session is just to be really to raise a bit of awareness on if you do choose to invest, there are a couple of things to be aware of when you do it. If you're interested in the topic in general, not necessarily Inyova, I've been talking about Inyova way too much, just the topic of impact investing, what is impact investing, how does finance can change the world and these kind of things. There's a blog section in our website where we have a lot of cool articles. There's one that is called Impact Investing, Taking Back Control, that is covering the theory of change that I've just mentioned, way more details. So I definitely invite you to go there. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the end. Our mission is really to turn investing into a social movement for a better world. And that is just my marketing side. We're also launching in a month Pillar 3A, so retirement plan for Swiss people. And this is going to be actually the only truly sustainable Pillar 3A in Switzerland. Yes, and to finish, whether you invest with Inyova or not doesn't really matter as long as you invest sustainably. But if you do want to invest with us, here is a code for 6 months of free investing if you're interested. And the code is Kickstart. Yes, and I think that kind of close everything I wanted to say about impact investing. And now, if you have questions, I'm going to stop sharing and you can ask them now.
Well, thank you very much for the insightful presentation. So let's open the floor to questions or challenges. Depends how nice our participants are.
I think
I saw you
a general question.
in the
Go on.
Nate, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was just saying Jörg has a question in the chat, but I think he's on the train, so I didn't want to stop in front.
Oh, okay. Isn't my money still stupid, not changing behavior of the company if I don't influence my voting rights? Yeah, I think that's a good challenge. So this is why I think, I mean, there's really two things. As I said, if you don't have post-investment action, that's true. Actually, the impact will be quite limited. And this is why now the tendency, and there's a really good ETF actually that exists in the US that right now is doing that. But I mean, basically no one is really doing that right now, unless you're just really rich. No one is doing it. Engine number one in the US is doing something really similar and really great. And they give the sharing rights, the voting rights. And this is what we're working on at Inyova, because I agree. I mean, this is literally the next step. If you don't have that, then how do you make sure people will, company will actually be accountable for what they do and also will change what they're doing? The good thing is I do feel that if more and more people invest, because when we really think about it, it's only a minority of people that invest first. There's only a minority of people that really care about this subject or are aware of this subject. I think everyone cares, but probably not that aware. The difference is then if all this money is then redirected into that direction, I think we're going to see more and more innovation into that field where people will take the power.
So I have a question too.
Yes.
So we're very similar as a company, but we are a data provider. So we don't actually do the enablement of the investing, but we try to give people the data, or institutions the data, to make sure that the companies they're invested in are really doing what they say they're doing. How do you guys look worldwide for companies in that list of 400? Like, do you have a geographic focus at all? Because we've looked at Latin America and Africa and Asia, but because the requirements are so different, and the level of transparency is so much different as well, we've had just struggles to try to figure out, okay, is it fair to compare like an Apple in the US with a Swisscom in Switzerland with a mining company in South Africa? How have you guys figured that out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think data in general is going to be it's the key of like the whole sustainability thing, because if you don't have data, everyone can claim they're sustainable, really. So I think definitely the way we've solved it, I'm not saying it's like the best way. We definitely have in our portfolio more European countries and US countries. That's for sure. We do have a couple of other countries, but we have a big focus on Europe and the US. Yes, that's true.
We do the same thing, so very smart.
Okay. Ooh. If you do find a good way to do that, please let me know, because I'm sure our investment team would be really interested in doing the same.
Super. And maybe another question that goes into this direction is, how do you assess the companies in their universe? Which framework do you use to really technically, which definitions of sustainabilities? Because you have companies from many different areas. How do you put them all together, if you do that at all?
Yeah, so I kind of covered that, but it's true I didn't go into too much detail also because I'm unfortunately not part of the investment office, so they would be probably better at answering this question. But so as I said before, there's first the two combination of things. So the sustainable criteria and then the financial criteria. But I think your question is more about like the sustainable criteria. So there's really a lot of things the investment office is doing. So there's a couple of database they're using. They're not using just one. I mean, obviously they're not using just the company data, otherwise that would be a bit problematic. So we have 3 different data providers that we use to do that, which is one way to do it. We also make sure that there's enough data available on the company. So not data only provided by the company itself, but we make sure that there's enough analysts that looked at the company, which is really one way we do it. And then I guess it's still very high level, and I'm sorry I can't go into much more details, but I mean, if you're interested, I can absolutely give you the contact of an investment office. But we definitely, what I said before, is ESG criteria, we go beyond that. So we definitely go beyond these ESG criteria. And this is actually something that, I mean, maybe Nate, you will agree with. A lot of people are actually only looking at that. So the moment you also take into account the impact that the product and the services are, you're already doing much better than a lot of people. Yeah.
That also would have been my question. Particularly if you already look at the behavior, individual behavior, it's extremely difficult to decide what behavior actually helps how much the environment. And I think on a company level, it's much more difficult. So for example, you have the category of renewable energy, which includes maybe very like environmental friendly energies. There's maybe also photovoltaics, which is a very bad impact on climate. At the moment, due to the production in China. Do you consider such things, or is this really such a broad category? Or also, for example, the example is Oatly. I mean, this is compared to milk something much better, but still any bottled beverage is bad for the environment and stupid because we have so good water in Switzerland. So is it okay to support this or not? So at the end, I think you have to make some decisions, and you must like transparently communicated. So how does you decide that this is still sustainable, in what sense, so that then the investors can say?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And so Inyova is based on individual decisions. So the idea that we make as much information available as possible to the consumer. So typically, if you're about to, if you do your strategy and you go through the companies, there's always a company description, and there it's not all unicorn and rainbow. So we always say, okay, this company is great for this, but bear in mind that this and these things happen. Obviously, it can't be like things that are completely against everything we believe in, but we're completely transparent in that sense. We have Tesla in our universe, typically, which is a highly controversial company. I mean, it definitely is. So whenever we have this company description, it's a short, I'm not going to pretend it's like a 10-page report, but there's always a description that will show you the good things and the bad things. And I think the main problem with the business model of Inyova, if you invest in shares, you have to invest in listed companies, and listed companies are big. And the problem of this is that they have so many operations that, as you said, they're definitely not perfect. Now, when I'm saying that, it kind of goes into the whole way of what you want to do with your sustainable habits, because I mean, companies are just the same as what we do as individuals, right? There's a lot of things we do that are great, but they're never perfect. So I think the cursor is just thinking, okay, do I take this first step until I find something even better, until something even better exists? But we leave the decision into the person hands. We really give the information that exists. And then if you personally hate Tesla and you have really good reason for it, you remove that company. If there's a company that you really believe in, you can add them to your portfolio. So I'm not going to pretend this is a perfect thing, and I'm not going to pretend that every single company that is in our portfolio is perfect. But I do believe that there's a gap between companies like this ones and company you can find in general funds that you don't even know you're investing in. So the idea is at least we put the power in your hand to make that decision. And you invest consciously into these companies, knowing that you invest in this company and not in something else. But I mean, I agree. Ideally, you invest in a startup, you invest in a project that you can control end to end, and there you have a real impact. The only problem is not everyone can do that.
Yes, thank you a lot for the answer. May I ask another question? If a company is improving but bad, would this still go into sustainable options? Say an airline that massively invests in air travel that is less damaging and climate damaging, for example. I mean, this would be something you might say, okay, better to have something that improves than that all the airlines are just damaging as before, but obviously it is not something very environmental friendly. So would this be something you accept, or would this be something you reject?
So it depends on the handprint criteria, like the handprint really. So I think an airline company would never be in there because the core of everything they do is emitting CO2. And so that would never go into our universe. But we do have an approach where we do include companies. So I think a really good example is this, I can't remember, Norwegian company that is called Ørsted. So Ørsted 20 years ago, it's an energy company. All they were doing was oil drilling, literally. And that was 20 years ago. And since then, they've completely shifted. They've actually stopped doing that, and they've only focused now on renewable energy. Now they've been voted this year, whatever that means, but the most sustainable company in the world. And this is a good example of a company that we would have never put in our universe, but that is now one of our champions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so maybe now is a good time to close this session, 1 minute early. Thank you, first of all, Mathilde, for joining us and for giving us your time. I think everybody here really appreciated it, and this Q&A session is really valuable. To all the participants, and also to you, Mathilde, obviously, I invite you to next week's session about climate and biodiversity, a talk given by Nick Becklinger, founder of Cleantech. So, yeah, I hope to see you all next week at 3. Yeah, thank you all for joining, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mathilde.
Thank you very much. Bye.